You're listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.
Shannon, James,
Hey.
Selena, Serena. You guys are with Project Schoolhouse, and we'll get into that here in a second. I just want to say how excited I am to have you both here, because South Texas is represented extremely well today.
That's right.
It's awesome.
So we got a Live Oak County boy and girl, and a Duval County. Now I will say this. Duval does stretch into some shady parts of South Texas, but Frere is not part of that. So, Shannon,
Yeah.
before we get into your role with Project Schoolhouse, what are you working in these days? You're a lawyer, correct?
I'm a lawyer, yeah. So, left George West, went to college, went to law school, I've served in lots of different areas of the law, done lots of different things. I'm actually, I don't know if you even know this, I'm not working right now.
What?
Yeah, I've practiced law my whole career, all these years, and then about a year ago, lots of things going on, but mostly two teenage kids running me ragged.
Yeah.
So I had gotten to a point where my job was pretty demanding and crazy, and the kids, keeping up with the kids' lives was pretty demanding and crazy, and so I'm taking a little break, and I don't know how long that will be. Actually, it's already been a little longer than I had planned. So I thought I was just going to take, a summer and a little more off last summer. And
So there's nothing you can do with teenage kids when you are done with them?
I should.
You got to keep them?
It's funny because a lot of women like to be home with their kids when their kids are really young, right? Mm-hmm. And then they go back to work. And I'm really glad I've kind of done it the opposite way, because I felt like when they were really little,
they were terrible.
Well, no, that sounds terrible. Anybody can change their diaper, anybody can feed them. I gave them all the love I could at night. But it's right now is when they're learning such critical things.
Yeah.
My son is 12, my daughter's 14, almost 15. And it's right now is when I really want to have my eye on them a little more closely. Sure. And teach them about the world in a way I want them to learn it, right? They're getting exposed to everything in the world in a broader way. And it's I want to make sure I'm there to kind of guide that story and guide. So anyway, I don't know. I'm just glad that I can do that now, as opposed to I wasn't able to do it when they were younger. So about for the last year, I've been home with the kids. Just managing our lives, But yes, for 20-something years, I practiced law, and most recently I was at Whole Foods Market doing a lot of their transactional legal work.
Okay.
Kind of all the contracts and transactions needed to keep the grocery business going at Whole Foods.
And so you're not doing that anymore? That's part of what you stopped doing as well?
Just a year ago, I stopped that. I worked at Whole Foods for 8 years. That's actually where Selena and I met.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
She was also at Whole Foods. But that was my most recent legal work I was doing. So, I've actually been doing more legal work, a little pro bono for Project Schoolhouse, pro bono for other organizations. But
is it strictly organizations, or if an old high school buddy needed something? Yeah.
I have a list of people who need wills done. And my parents are at the top of the list. So as I work my way through the list, you're on it.
Well, mine will be easy because I got nothing to leave anybody. So. And Selena, what is your background?
I left Frere to go to college in Houston at Rice University, and never moved back to live in Frere, but my parents are still there on the ranch that my parents and grandparents and great-grandparents have lived on for generations. It's a beautiful part of the world, even though it is Duval County. And so I, after school, after graduating from college, got my CPA degree or CPA license, and was working in public accounting for a while. And we had moved out of the state as my husband was in graduate school, and then his first job. I lasted 5 years in the north, and then we just had to come back home to Texas because it was way too cold. And I remember when we were coming back to Texas, we had decided to live in Austin. And I said, I think I want to work for Whole Foods. I think I could just get a job at Whole Foods. And Martin's like, well, you know what? They probably have a lot of people wanting to work for them. But sure enough, within 3 months, I had interviewed there and gotten a job there doing accounting work in lots of different parts of that company. I was there for 25 years.
Wow.
In about 5 different positions all over Texas and in the UK and London for a few years, and then back here. As my most recent job was on the real estate team doing financial analysis and administration. So.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yep.
So you said 25 years. Are you still working for them? Or?
I am not. Similar to Shannon's experience,
You're helping her with the kids?
I wish. Come on over.
I took a trip to Nicaragua.
Oh, okay.
About 10 years ago. 2013 was my first trip there, and I fell in love with that organization and the work that they were doing in a way that we'll talk about more today.
That's Project Schoolhouse?
Project Schoolhouse.
Okay. How did you come into contact with those folks?
A really dear friend of mine was doing pro bono work for them. She's in marketing, and another really dear friend was doing their graphics design work. She's a graphics designer, and all pro bono. And they introduced me to the organization. We traveled there together, and I fell in love with the work. I came back and kept my Whole Foods job going at the same time that I was volunteering more and more for Project Schoolhouse. Till in 2019, actually, when a friend of mine says, you know, which job is getting in the way of the other? Because I couldn't decide what to do, and it was 25 years invested in a company that, and not at a point in my life where I wanted to retire, but I wanted to spend my time doing something that I cared passionately about, and that's when I decided to make the shift.
That's a big move. You know, it's interesting because we're like career focused and trying to provide a living for ourselves and our families, and then at a certain point it's weird because I kind of find myself like in that same sort of frame of thought where, you know, it's like I've been doing what I've been doing a long time. It's what I know. It's my comfort zone. But after a while, it's like my heart's not there. Right. You know, I can do this job without thinking about it. You know, it's not very difficult, especially with the experience that I have in it now. And it's weird because it's almost like you find yourself going, this is where I should be coasting, right? I've put in all this time. I've got all this experience. I'm really efficient in what I do. My stress levels have come down because of my knowledge base and what I'm doing. But my heart's not in it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
That's where I was too. Yeah,
exactly.
And so, as far as you wanting to make that transition, was that a conversation that you had with your husband, or did you just say, "Hey, this is what I want to do, and this is what I'm doing"?
You know, he has been the most supportive husband ever. Through all of my whole career, he quit his job when we had the opportunity to move with Whole Foods to London. Oh, wow. He actually quit his job before I said yes.
He said good because I quit last week.
Exactly. So he's been super supportive, and we're fortunate where we are financially, where we both have the same goals, where like, what does more money get you if you're not happy with what you're doing in your life? And so he was very supportive, and I don't think he realized at the time, we never really talked about how it probably wasn't ever going to turn into a paying job. It was just a leap of faith into what felt right, and knowing that things would work out.
Yeah, Selena's a full-time executive director volunteer.
That's awesome.
Probably wasn't I didn't go into it with that in mind, but hopefully restructuring things a bit that will make the organization more sustainable. And what I love about it, that we'll get into more, I know, is just kind of bringing that business sense to, like, there were so many teams that I built at Whole Foods over the years that I feel really proud about, but being able to turn those same skills into, like, how would I structure this organization in a way that helps it be sustainable and be able to accomplish its mission, but at the same time not be overly administrative and like all the money that you're giving to charity that really is just going to someone's salary. It didn't make sense to me. Yeah. So.
Well, it's funny because we don't always look at organizational skills as a skill or a talent.
It's huge.
It's not like, being extremely fast or being able to jump higher or being whatever talent people have, good at dance or singing, but it is a talent, and when you can bring that to an organization, that may be lacking in that area, you know, it can make a world of difference. Really can.
It really has.
And how did you get into Project Schoolhouse? How did that come along?
Yeah, so I had a really good friend in Austin that I'd known, that I'd worked with at a previous job. Before Whole Foods, I was with a company called Green Mountain Energy Company, and so we were a retail electric provider. And another attorney that I worked with there, she and her husband had invited Doug and I, my husband's Doug, to a dinner for Project Schoolhouse, and they have an annual fundraiser, and so this was their annual fundraiser, and so we just showed up to have a good time with our friends at a fundraiser. And when I got there, I already had met Selena. I would help Selena's group with contracts at Whole Foods, so I knew Selena from that standpoint. Selena was there. All these other Whole Foods people were there. I didn't even really, know that it was a Whole Foods oriented group. Not that it didn't come out of Whole Foods or anything. It was just that a lot of Whole Foods employees had gotten involved and were volunteers with the organization. So, we're at this dinner and I see all these coworkers and, that just that first fundraiser, just hearing the story about what they do, who they serve, how they do it. They always have these amazing videos that they show at the fundraisers where they're, talking with the kids that are benefited and talking with the families and, all the people of these communities that just fell in love with the work they were doing and, knew they were a small organization that needed help and volunteers. And so have been involved since, what year was that?
2016.
2016. Okay,
wow.
So that was the first fundraiser I went to. And then I've hosted tables for them. At this annual fundraiser, they just ask for table hosts. They don't sell, like a lot of big nonprofits will sell tables or sell tickets to their fundraisers. They don't do that. They just ask for people to, host a table where you bring all your friends. And so I've hosted tables since then, I think. I don't want to overstate it, but quite a few years I've hosted tables. So just tried to introduce as many people to the organization as possible, help them with a little bit of legal work, and have just continued to fall more and more in love with what they do. And so recently Selena said, hey, we have a board position open and would love for you to join us if you can. And I had just quit my full-time job, and not that I had a ton of bandwidth, but it was something I'm so excited to do, and finally had some time to, help in a bigger way. So I agreed to join, and I love it.
Let me ask you this, because sometimes I run into, I think it's a character flaw.
Of mine?
No, of mine. The commitment that you guys take when you take something on like this, it's a serious commitment. And I think a lot of times I get so lazy, and I just, I started getting nervous because it's like if I say yes to something and I don't understand how much work and effort goes into it, for you guys, when you decide to say, hey, I'm going to commit to this and I'm going to be a part of this and in whatever capacity it is, was there ever any sort of, nervousness in jumping into it? Because especially something like this, because the benefit and the people it benefits, what it provides to them is extremely critical. It's education, it's water. I mean, something as basic as water. We have it on the freaking table. Thanks, Bojan.
Yeah.
But if you're not 100% dedicated to it, those people end up suffering in the long run, in whatever capacity. So you have to have people that are 100% involved and 100% committed. That way they get the max that you can provide for them, Well,
and I think one thing that I've learned over all these years of practicing law and balancing a family and all of that is that I think you're a bit of a perfectionist, right? I was definitely a bit of a perfectionist.
Nobody's going to believe you, but yes.
You are. I could tell just from the way you asked that question. And I've struggled with that a lot, especially when I was younger. I was an absolute perfectionist. And then as life gets busier and more complicated, you just have to start letting go of perfect. And, I knew when I joined that there was going to be a lot to do, but I had to give myself the permission to not try to take it all on at once. And I mean, I'm just a board member. So Selena's really the one who's got the bigger load with the organization. But I mean, I think, like when you're balancing your career and your family, it's like you have to let go of like being able to do any of those jobs perfectly. I mean, first of all, you can't be a perfect parent. I don't even know what that looks like. But like, I think over the years, so when Selena and I had talked about me joining the board previously, and I was like, I just, for a while I just couldn't. But then, I think you just have to be okay with doing a good job, and because somebody has to do it, right?
Sure.
And
everything
busy.
Everything that you give has value, and even if you feel like you could give more, or if you feel guilty because you can't feel like you give enough, everything that you do give makes a huge difference. And one thing that we're super careful about, or I am, in talking to people about getting involved in this organization, is everyone has something that they can give, and as long as you're upfront about what that could look like and take people where they are, and appreciate and value what they can give without over asking, as long as there's that transparency and that openness, then it's all okay. It's like giving people permission to say, this is all I can do, and acknowledging that even something small is huge, especially when you get to how significant the need is.
I guess in just listening to you just now, it kind of dawned on me that it's better for me to give something than to be worried about not trying to be the best or perfect at it and not giving anything.
Perfect is the enemy of the good, right? I remember hearing that phrase at one point.
Stop saying that, because it makes so much sense.
That helped me like kind of get over, let go of trying to do things better than you really have to anyway. Perfect is the enemy of the good. If you try to be perfect, then you can't do the good stuff,
Yeah.
Just do the good stuff. And
I think that's what holds up people like me, because a lot of times I will overthink things, and I may just sit in the living room and think about like something that I want to do, and I run through my head, and I get this, and it's terrible because it's not the best way to do things. But I'll sit there and I'll run through my head what it looks like doing it, and what's the end game, what are the hiccups I'm going to run into, and I finally by the time I'm done with the thought, I talk myself out of even starting.
Yeah.
And that's the worst way to do something.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
My husband's helped me a little bit with that too, because
You're so smart.
No.
She's been smart since we were 16.
Yeah,
Imagine
right. Right. No, but he's much more of a risk taker, much more of a I just kind of halfway do it, that kind of guy. And he's really helped me kind of break out of that thinking. The way you think it through too much, and then by the end you found so many problems it's not worth taking it on. He's helped me kind of deal with that same kind of thinking a little bit. I still do it all the time.
Yeah.
But
Well, yeah, that's something that kind of slows down my, I guess, efforts in doing more for people than what I could, is because I'm always worried that I'm not going to be able to do enough in it, and then I just don't even take that first step, which is bad. So let's jump into the Project Schoolhouse and what it is exactly, because we talked about it for a little bit, and I want people to kind of understand. Let's start with I guess maybe the origin of it and where it came from, who kind of started it, and what I think what it provides and who it provides it to is wonderful. It's very well needed, and it's always been needed. But what was the, I guess, triggering factor that made whoever started this project to really pick up the ball and run with it, and not be Gabe?
Yeah, Project Schoolhouse was founded by a gentleman by the name of Tab Barker. He's a musician in Austin, and before he moved to Austin, he spent time right after college traveling in Central America. He was teaching English in Costa Rica. He finished that assignment and traveled some more, and as he was thinking about what he wanted to do in his life, his dad had spent time in the Peace Corps and always talked about how fulfilling that was. And he had also developed a love for Latin America. And he knew he wanted to do development work. He wanted to give back. He started with the school that he had taught English at. in Costa Rica, and he was back in town, back home here in the U.S., and he called the teacher at the school where he was teaching and said, "Hey, I think I want to just give back. I want to say thanks for my time there. I know the basketball hoop was broken. Can I buy y'all a new basketball hoop?"
Something as simple as that, huh?
Something as simple as that. And the teacher's like, "Well, you could, but what we really need is a new classroom." And, being young and not knowing, he's like, "Oh, I could raise money to build a classroom," not having any idea how much a classroom would cost. But he did. I mean, it took him some time, and he raised the money to build a classroom. That work happened. He loved doing development work, and he wanted to do it. He wanted to practice that, though, in an area of the world that needed more help than Costa Rica. And so he knew someone in a kind of middle of Nicaragua, Rio Blanco, which is where our office is today. And it's at that point where the paved road ended in Nicaragua, going from the west of the country towards the east. About the center of the country is Rio Blanco. And he knew someone there, so he went to visit there. He had conversations there. He developed and hired people there to lead the project. He built his very first school there. And there's more for sure to how the project developed from there. But he loved doing that work. He thought he was good at it. He wanted to do more of it, and that's how Project Schoolhouse started. So he's still in Austin and still involved. He's on our board of directors.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's funny because when you, it's so weird, and I'm getting old and weird, but it's so cool how being in service to others is so fulfilling. When we're young, we think we know what's fulfilling, and so we pursue those things. And then you get older and you do something for somebody that can't do anything for you, mm-hmm. and you see how much it changes their life. It really does fill you. This is going to sound super, super stupid, and I hate even saying it, but I was watching some of the videos that you guys have on YouTube, and it was so interesting to see these kids growing up and being so happy.
Yep.
And, I think in some of the videos, I guess it's very rainy over there. I guess there's the rainforest or whatever in the jungle. And they're in the mountains. And they take the animals out of the barn. They sweep the floor. They bring the desks in, and the kids have school. Yep. Their feet are dirty. The bottoms of their dresses are dirty. And you see that, you think about how much you take for granted. Right. And you think about, how fortunate we are. It's funny because we were talking about my dad earlier, and he would tell me a story, and I we were spending some time together, taking him to some medical procedures, and he was telling me the best meal I ever, and we talked earlier, my Spanish is terrible. Yeah. He said the best meal I ever had was, I think he said pollo robado, when you steal something. How do you say it? He said, and that's what it was, stolen chicken. And it was funny because, he talked about his dad leaving, they didn't have any food. He says there were some chickens that used to run around the neighborhood, and they opened the back door. They didn't have anything. They didn't have any food. They didn't have anything. So they opened the back door. He kind of ran the chicken into the back of the house, and the grandma closed the door so they could have the chicken in the house. And they ended up catching it and cooking it. And it's funny because when I'm watching that video, not that I'm equating my dad's experience with these kids, but, our parents, our grandparents didn't grow up the way we did. Right. And we look at that and we're disconnected from it because we think it was such a long time ago.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
And it really wasn't.
It really wasn't.
But yet there's still people that are experiencing similar experiences today.
Well, and what I love about Project Schoolhouse is that it takes such little amount of money and such little amount of effort to really change their situation because, and we'll get into this further, I'm sure, but what Project Schoolhouse quickly realized is that building these schoolhouses was really important, but the kids still weren't really able to go to school because the communities did not have running water. So it was these kids' jobs to, hike to wherever the closest stream or river was with, gallon jugs to collect water and bring it back. And so they were not only just busy doing all that work, but sometimes that water was not healthy and kids were getting sick. So they were either fetching water, multiple times a day or sick from bad water. And so they weren't able to use these schools because they were so busy. So then they got into also, while they're working on a schoolhouse, also putting in a water system so that the community had, could actually turn on water in the community and save all that time. But it just takes so little, to be able to change our lives drastically.
So I guess these areas that these people live in, I mean, they could probably be miles to go get water, I'd imagine, for these little kids. So what ends up happening is, I guess somebody comes and locates groundwater, correct?
For the water projects? Mm-hmm. No. Okay, so here's what's so beautiful about these water systems. And it works in this part of the world because there's a lot of elevation. It's the rainforest. It's beautiful. There's rain every single day. But people are drinking groundwater because it's the closest water. And if you're carrying water, you don't go to the cleanest water. You go to the closest water. Mm-hmm. And it'll be mucky. It'll have agricultural runoff in it. You're sharing it with the livestock. I mean, it's not safe water to drink. Right. But because it's a rainforest, there's freshwater springs bubbling up everywhere. And community members know where these freshwater springs are, but they'll be high in the mountains far away. And so with these water projects that we build, we, in conjunction with community members, build. And I want to talk about that because that's more than what this organization does, it's how they do it that is the difference, I think, between a sustainable organization and one that is just people coming in. Anyway, I love the partnership and the way this works, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But we tap those freshwater springs at high elevation. We close them off so they can't be contaminated by whatever is running off in the forest. And we take it via PVC pipe that's dug into the ground to a tank that is used to pressurize the system and to allow the sediment to drop. But otherwise, it's pure spring water.
Wow.
And it goes to every single home in the community. It goes to the church. It goes to the school. If there happens to be a health clinic, which some communities will have, we'll take water to the health clinic. So every single place in the community where people live or go is covered with safe water that they can just turn a tap and get clean water, just like us. And that makes the difference versus taking it to a central point or building a well where people are still having to carry water and people are still having to collect it in a way that leaves it open to contamination or to mosquitoes. And so people get, like, having water in your home so you can just turn a tap is life-changing.
Sure.
And so with these projects, we build a school, we build a clean water system, and we build latrines with doors that lock. So you can go to the bathroom and have a locked door and privacy. And that is what we do. It's transformational for the community. The schools will oftentimes be the only building in the community that is a closed environment, clean, built of cement environment. So it ends up becoming also a community center. We build a small community kitchen there at the schools, so the moms who volunteer to make lunch every day for the children have a place to cook, and so the children get a hot meal at lunch. And that's what we do. And we've been doing it for 16 years now.
Approximately how many folks does a system serve? Mm-hmm. I guess how big are the communities that how many people live there?
These communities are from 30 to 60 families. Mm. Families are multi-generational. We average about 7 people per family. And so it's 300 to 500 people per community water system. And there's, because it's very agriculture, like everybody's livelihoods is agriculture. The houses are pretty spread out because everyone has their little ranchito, the place where they're living in their area where they're farming, where they're raising pigs or cattle or whatever they're raising there. So they're pretty spread out. The water system that we just finished at the very beginning of last year is a community called GMP. It was the most spread out community that we had worked in before. And what's beautiful about the way Project Schoolhouse works is that we fundraise the money that is required to buy the materials. And the small team that we have that are skilled builders who will teach community members how to build, but they are the ones who donate all of the labor to build these projects for their families. They'll work 9 months to a year volunteering to build, to dig trench, to haul materials by horseback, to do anything that is needed to make these projects a reality for their families. So they are the biggest donors to these projects. And the project that we just finished last year in BLMP was 22 kilometers of trench that these guys hand dug through the mud, through the rain. I mean, it's hot, muggy, beautiful part of the world. But it's hard work.
You know, that just goes to show the pride that these folks are taking in their community. You know, it's funny because we use the word community, but, you know, when we're talking about it and I'm trying to visualize it, we're using the word community to describe these places, but it's almost like it's not actually becoming a community till they have these schoolhouses, till they have these places to go fetch water that are close by, you know, and it encourages interaction with the people that live there, you know.
It does.
Instead of just tending to your farm and getting your water, you know, now you've got a gathering place and you've got a place where everybody's children are connecting or meeting each other and, you know, becoming closer.
And they often have some sort of a school already, but like you said, it's often a barn that's converted during the day to be used, you know, as a schoolhouse, or it's I mean, you can talk more about the different types of, you know, buildings that exist, but it's you know, there is some type of school already. It's just not a great environment that really induces learning because they have so many factors working against them, you know, dirt floors that turn to mud every day when it starts raining. And, you know,
I don't know why it always affects me negatively, but when I see a little kid's dress with dirt along the bottom of the dress, it always bothers me.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Because that is you know, when I'm thinking of cute things, there's a child in a cute little dress.
Yeah.
And then, you know, in one of the videos that you guys have on there, you see the red clay dirt, you know, on their feet, on the bottom of their dress, and they're still happy as could be.
Oh yeah.
You know, but it's heartbreaking because those are just simple things that, you know, I think a lot of people take for granted.
Right.
And small changes, like you said, not even, you know, major changes, but small changes that make a world of difference.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And you know, to your community point, what we've found is because people are volunteering on this project, they take such ownership of it, and there's so much pride in what they have built with their own hands for their families. A lot of times when they don't feel like they have a lot to give to their families, but they can work, and they do. And they've made a huge difference. Their dedication has made a difference in their child's life. And it's a trade-off for them, for sure. I mean, they are also farming and ranching and doing all of their work, but they're squeezing that in and working more hours as well to work on the school and water projects because it is transformational for their families. And it builds a sense of community. What we've seen as well is once that structure is there and once that community is built, it continues. We see the teachers staying after school to help the moms learn how to read. We see improved quality of teachers who all of a sudden want to work in that community because it's what they call a real school. And so it's the very foundation of what becomes just building upon each other, just this way of I mean, everyone takes such pride and they want to be there, and then their children are learning to read, so maybe they should learn to read. I mean, the adult literacy rate in these communities is less than 10%. And when there's a place for them to be that they can go learn to read too, it happens on its own. It's not us Americans coming in and telling them what to do or suggesting things. It's what just organically builds from having a place that they feel proud of.
Yeah. And I think that's a big deal too for folks when you can take pride in your community, when you can take pride in the job that you're doing, when you can take pride in the fact that you're learning something new, you're learning to read, you're learning to understand what your child's learning. You know, there's just so many extra benefits. You know, being able to teach a generation of folks a new skill, right? They know how to farm and probably raise animals, and you know, but now they're learning how to provide water to an area that didn't have it before.
Yeah.
You know, and these are skills that they'll teach their children.
Right.
Well, and I haven't gotten to go yet. I still hope to go, but I've fallen in love with so many of the stories I hear or the videos they bring back. And some that have touched me the most are these elderly women in these communities where, you know, these women have spent their entire life, you know, they're towards the end of their lives now, but they have spent their entire lives hauling water. And as women, they know it's not always safe to walk those miles to the stream,
Sure.
bathe in the stream, you know, so they themselves have been in these unsafe situations. They have had to, you know, watch their daughters be in these unsafe situations, watch their granddaughters be in these unsafe situations. And they have such amazing pride now seeing that, like, their community has improved. They have brought this new, you know, safety to their kids and their grandkids by building these projects. And so now all the, you know, safety that they didn't have, you know, their whole lives, they've now provided that to their grandkids, you know, and they have such pride in that. Exactly. So sweet. So.
That's another byproduct, I guess, of what's going on there. You know, it's funny. I've been designing like plumbing systems for like 22 years. And I always joke, everybody looks at it as that aspect of engineering as the redhead stepchild. Nobody wants to do it. And that's how I made a living at, sorry, I know you're redhead, but
no offense.
No offense. But you know, there's always the electrical and the mechanical, there's the HVAC, and then it falls into plumbing. And you know, I always half joke with people when I tell them that plumbing is the most critical thing that you could ever have. Oh, yeah. And I half joke because it's true. You know, it's providing a means of keeping people hydrated. You know, water's life, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's cleanliness. It's keeping people from getting sick. It's keeping places clean. It's, you know, water is so critical. And when you sit there and you think about it, and you think about, you know, how readily accessible it is to us, you know, you tend to forget about how other people live.
Right.
You know, as far as the pumps go, how do you guys provide electricity to those things up in the mountains?
Because it's all gravity fed, it doesn't need electricity. It's all
there's no electric
downhill by pressure of just the beauty. Like, it's just gravitational fall of the water. And we have one water engineer. I know it's raining. Speaking of water.
This is amazing.
Yay.
I keep hearing it.
I know.
It's so funny that we're talking about water and we're in a massive drought. And now here comes the rain.
Here's the rain. Yay. Keep raining the whole time.
For sure. And so that's the beauty of these projects, is that it doesn't require electricity, and there's nothing that can break. The only thing that you have to do to maintain these systems is clean the filtration system out once a month. We are sure to install water meters at every single access point, so there is just a small charge for the use of the water, but we feel like it's important that people value the water and it doesn't get wasted. And that small charge is what goes into a community account that's held, that pays for the maintenance, for the cleaning fluids that they need to clean out. And so it's super simple, life-changing, and yet it's all fed by gravity. So no moving parts, nothing that can break.
You know, it's funny because I'm not that I'm well versed in the Bible, but the Bible talks about teaching men to fish rather than giving them a fish. Mm-hmm. And when people are invested in something that they've created, that they've taken mm-hmm. part of, that they pay into, mm-hmm. It's treasured more. It's more. It's seen more as something that I've put my time, my. When you're digging a trench that far, I mean, that's labor. That's super labor intensive.
Yeah.
So people can really invest themselves into that.
Right.
And they teach that sense of pride to their kids.
Right.
And, hopefully in another generation or two, at least in that area, mm-hmm. The idea of not having water is going to be so foreign to them.
Hopefully.
That's awesome.
At this point, though, we probably have about a 10-year wait list of communities that are waiting for help. And in these areas, I mean, at this point, there are about 1.8 million people in Nicaragua that still need clean water in their home. They're still drinking from streams and rivers and runoff. And so the need has never been greater. And yet, there are neighbors.
Yeah.
I can leave my house in the morning, I'm there by lunchtime.
Wow.
It's so close, and yet a world away
Sure.
with what they have and what they need.
So are these communities already known to you guys, or how do you guys go about finding areas, figuring out maybe who's the most critical, and start prioritizing mm-hmm. projects? How do you guys go about that?
We've worked there for 16 years now. Our team is Nicaraguan. They all live in Rio Blanco and the communities surrounding it, so communities where we have worked before. And they come to us and they get they get on a list. They know what is required. They have to find the spring. They have to get the landowner of that spring to donate it to the community. They have to get all the legal paperwork done, and then they can go on our wait list. And then they just keep checking back in to see where they are on that wait list. And the frequency and commitment that they show to continue to check in with our project coordinator, her name is Maria Inez, she's amazing. That shows their motivation and their engagement and their ability to self-organize. And because they're donating all the labor for these projects, that commitment is what keeps them on the list and keeps them moving up the list. If they put their name on a list and never show back up again, chances are they're not organized and aren't going to work. And so we have a really long wait list, but that's how the wait list and the kind of your place on the wait list keeps maintained, just the active engagement. And it always tends to be one community leader who is really he's the organizer. He's the one who continues to knock on the door and ask where they are and get all the paperwork done. And they're the ones that we go to visit. So when I go, hopefully once a year, COVID set us back for a little bit, but we go once a year and we tour the communities that are next up on the list. And Maria Inez keeps that list there in Nicaragua.
How did this is kind of probably a no-brainer, stupid question, but how did COVID really affect you guys? Did it kind of shut it down, or were y'all able to operate?
We were able to operate because it's led by Nicaraguans, and the fact that we couldn't get there didn't matter. We were still fundraising and still sending money down, and the communities are very rural and everything's outside there. So we were careful. We didn't want to bring the virus into these remote communities, so we were careful about how our team was interacting with them and going and moving into communities. But our community projects typically last 9 months to a year, and so we were able to operate through all of that and continue keeping projects. And I mean, during a pandemic when the ability to wash your hands in your home was crucial to your health, the projects were never more important. And fortunately, we were able to keep it going. The funding got a little bit tricky just because there was so much being diverted elsewhere. Some of the foundations that I was speaking with about taking on new projects like ours were kind of put a pause on new partnerships and new funding. So that gave us it just made it harder to fundraise, honestly. But we're pretty committed and dedicated to keeping it going at whatever scale we can make it happen.
How far are they bringing in materials from? Is there a local source, or how far is I'd imagine it's a lot of piping to get up the mountain.
It's a challenge in a lot of the projects. Yeah.
Probably one of the harder parts of these projects is the logistics of getting, because there's no roads, there's no electricity, and so we oftentimes will dig a temporary road, or the community members will volunteer to dig a temporary road into their community so we can get enough materials in during the dry season in the spring, so that then they can work all year long. They're used to the rain, like everybody works in the rain, but it's just getting the materials into these communities. And some of them are closer to a road, and so a little bit easier, but some of them we've worked in, 3 or 4 hours off-road.
Wow.
After you get to where the road ends. And oftentimes it'll be hilarious. We'll go visit a community, and Maria Inez just leads all of this because she knows it all. And we'll stop where the road ends, and I'll say, well, what are we doing now? And she says, oh, they're coming to get us. And so we just wait. And then over the hill will be, this whole group of people on horseback, and they'll bring horses, the extra horses, and we get on horseback, and that's the way that you get in through the rest of the trip is only through horseback, or we get off and we're going to walk for the next half an hour. So they're remote, super remote.
Yeah, that's something that I guess I didn't grasp this whole time we've been talking, is the remoteness of these areas that you're serving.
So remote.
When you say, we grew up in a small town.
Yeah.
So when you say there's no road here, to me it's kind of like,
oh, it's just a caliche road.
Yeah, it's a dirt road.
No,
it's caliche road.
No
it's it's that two little ruts in the grass is overgrown. But there's literally no road.
No roads, no trucks, everything's horseback, and that's why something that's really important also to this work is that we're not going in there to stay or have a presence. We don't teach. We don't proselytize. We're not doing anything except building what we build. And we want to just then go away. We don't. It's their community. It's their project, and we don't want to interfere with any of that. We just want to support them in the projects that they express that they want for their families, and they're the ones that are inviting us in to work in their communities because they need support with the engineering, the building skills, and the material costs.
So that's interesting because you're just the only footprint you're really leaving is that supply of water,
the new systems,
the new systems, the new school,
the new systems that help those families stay in these communities that they love and want to stay in anyway. But it just gives them a slightly better opportunity to have a sustainable life in those communities.
It makes a huge difference, and we see the economy then build from that. We see women who, they're also amazingly creative, who start businesses in their homes because they have water. They can then make tamales and sell them.
Yeah.
They can then...
I just got watery mouth.
You just got watery eyes? Is that what you said?
Watery mouth.
Oh, watery mouth.
Yeah, for sure.
I thought you were getting teary-eyed.
It's just, it changes everything in a way you don't even really realize or think about. Having water.
It takes them from just barely being able to feed and keep their kids healthy and safe to, being able to do a little more than that. And that, I'm sure, as a parent, feels amazing that you can now bring in a little extra income to your family. And
and have something to do. There's so much ingenuity, so much creativity, so much willingness to work, but you're working all day long just to get water, that time that can just get diverted to something that's more productive and valuable. And then the other thing that I know I never thought about until I really saw it was how hard it is to have a family in an area where you don't have water in your home, to try to bathe your baby in a river. While, how wiggly and squirmy and slippery a wet baby is.
Yeah.
Imagine doing that when you're perched on a rock in a river.
Yeah.
And one little girl I spoke with when I was asking her about, why she liked having water in her house. And she said, carrying water was okay. The snakes would scare me sometimes.
Oh, wow.
Oh, gosh.
And then it's of course, duh. It's a rainforest. There's snakes in that water.
Yeah.
One of the stories I love the most is, I mean, Selena's right. What we do is schoolhouses, water systems, and latrines. But there is a project that they did just not that long ago where there was a community where half of the community was on one side of a pretty significant river and the other half of the community was on the other side of the river. So Project Schoolhouse is coming in to build the school and the water system, and the community expressed how dangerous it is for their kids to try to cross that river every day to get to the school, because, right, the school's on one side. So half the community, those children are having to cross this river to get to their school. Well, half the time the river's too high for them to cross, so they can't go to school, right? They just can't go. Or they have to, was there another community that they could hike to in the other direction, right? But the closest school was right across the river.
Right.
So the community said, we need a bridge so that these kids can be safe. So that was the one time they went out of their, comfort zone of the three things we do and built this bridge. And the water engineer, you tell the story better, but the water engineer that, volunteers for Project Schoolhouse, he said, well, I'm an engineer. I can figure out how to get this community a bridge. So they built a bridge,
Wow.
And now
It's
these kids,
beautiful.
I mean, there were kids lost in the river, families lost children in that river until that simple bridge was built.
Yep.
And it has changed their lives,
It's amazing how, here in the United States, we look and we talk about how critical, education is, and in places like that, when it comes to, being able to provide for a family and having a meal and being able to raise a family, education turns into the last thing that is priority.
Well, it's so hard to continue with your education there too. So these schools are, do they call them primary or they call them primary? So these are the primary schools that are in the individual communities. And that ends at what age?
Sixth grade.
Sixth grade. Okay. So the communities, there's a school option through sixth grade, but after that, a lot of these kids who want to continue through high school, I mean, there's a story of a girl who would, from their community, go horseback. How many miles? I always get my story wrong. Selena always she's the fact checker. She would ride her horse, to the closest bus stop and then get on a bus and ride that bus to another community. Because high school from sixth grade on was Saturday only?
It's Saturday only.
Saturday
Oh,
only.
wow.
But, it's a major commitment for her to go horseback from early in the morning to the next community, get on a bus, go, her journey was far, but she was very committed to being able to make it through high school, and she's now in college, right?
She's
Really?
graduated from college and
Okay.
trying to get her teacher's certification. So it's such a wonderful success story.
So, I mean, one of these little girls in this community, without this project, without Project Schoolhouse, and without, her family's commitment to making sure she could get an education, she would not be getting her teacher's certificate, and then be able to come back and hopefully into one of these communities to teach,
Right.
So.
It's funny because there's so many things that you guys do for these folks that is wonderful, and then there's so many byproducts of those things that are wonderful. And one thing that kind of sticks out to me, and I think it's just because of the way I feel about things and how my mind works, is, I think so many times when quote unquote civilized communities come into a place extremely rural, you want to change it, right?
Yeah.
Let's take them out of this place and move them to the city. Let's change their way of life,
Right.
And what you guys are doing is not only making it better, but it's allowing them to stay where they are.
Exactly.
Right.
And be who they are.
Exactly.
And live the way they've always lived.
Well, just like growing up in George West. I mean, people
That's
want to
what-
stay in
yeah.
George West, but I remember my mom, she was an educator, right? She was a teacher, so education was super important to her and super important in our house. But she always encouraged us to leave George West, unfortunately, because it was like the opportunity is go make a better life. But you want, that's not what people want. People want to stay home,
Sure.
And just like these families, they want to stay home, but they need a little bit of opportunity.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of one thing that's in this that I mean, there's plenty to appreciate, right? But that's one thing that I kind of appreciate, because I like when, you go back, several hundred years, and you had, the Spanish coming in and bringing religion to indigenous people and moving them into towns. There was that whole process there. I like when you can help a community, but yet allow them to keep the roots and the origin of who they are.
Yeah.
Because that's where their pride is. Their pride is being in the mountains.
Yep.
Their pride is being able to grow and raise a family in the mountains. They're mountain people.
And in some ways, I would like to live that way.
Sure.
In some ways, it's like people living in big cities sometimes envy people who have this simpler lifestyle, I mean, it's such an amazing place to live.
I think that's why a lot of us end up moving out of, we move to the city to try and provide a life, and then we try and get out of there.
Yeah. Oh, if you ask my husband where he's leaving Austin soon. Not sure if the rest of his family's on board. But.
It's also very personal for me. I mean, I grew up in South Texas on a ranch that's been in my family for generations, and it's near and dear to my heart. And that land will always be our home. That's home. Mm-hmm. And an education allowed me to have opportunity and be successful and stable, and giving me this opportunity now to give back. And because I see what education and opportunity can give to other children.
It's funny that you say that, because, in a weird indirect way, it's kind of like hearing you say that makes me think we go out of our way to go to college. We go out of our way to get a good job. We go out of our way to make a good living. And one of the things that we should try and strive for, outside of providing a good life for ourselves, is to utilize all that to put us in a position to do something for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, isn't our purpose to make the world a little bit better somehow, however we can?
Yeah.
And this, versus all the other things that I could get involved with, this to me was an organization that was structured in a way that I know what I do makes a difference.
Yeah.
In a way that writing a check to some big nonprofit, I don't see the direct impact, and I don't see the direct benefit. And so,
well, that's one thing I love. Their annual fundraiser, it's October 26th, if anybody wants to come.
Where's it at?
October 26th in Austin.
Okay.
There's also virtual if you just want to join virtually, but I definitely recommend coming in person because it's a good experience.
So amazing.
But what I love that they do, some years I've been able to bring a lot of people to the fundraiser, and other years not as many. But one year I was able to bring a lot of friends, and after the fundraiser, Selena said, "Your table alone funded a school."
Really?
Yeah.
And
so
it
just doesn't take that much money. Well, I mean, and I immediately sent that message out to everybody who had come. I was like, guys, I don't know how much each of you gave, but whatever you gave, whatever we gave as a group, we funded an entire school to be built.
It costs so little because the labor's all volunteer.
Yeah.
It just doesn't take much. That's what I love.
Yeah.
How many systems, you may have touched on it earlier, but how many systems and schools have y'all built up to this point?
We've worked in, my number's right, I think it's 16 communities now. Almost all of them have water systems. They all have schools, and hundreds of latrines, one for every family and church and school in the community. So yeah.
That's pretty
16.
good.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
And for a small, scrappy little nonprofit.
Sure.
I mean, they're very small.
I mean, it's just me and our super dedicated board of directors, and we have one woman who's from Nicaragua herself, who lives in Austin and works with us, helping with all of the social media and communications. She's an amazing woman. She's our website.
She taught me how to use social media. She taught me how to post. When I'm
still learning.
I'm on some social media, but I'm not a big social media person. But when I joined the board, she was like, "Okay, let's get this out there to make people aware of what we do." I was like, "Okay, teach me how." I don't know.
She's amazing.
Help me with LinkedIn. Help me with Facebook.
Yes.
And all the others, Instagram, whatever.
Yeah.
What are some of the, we kind of talked a little bit earlier, but what are some of the, I guess, hiccups that you guys tend to run into? Or have y'all kind of streamlined everything enough to where you've got a system down, you walk in, you hit 9 months and you move to the next one? Is it pretty streamlined now, or do you find a hard time maybe finding materials, or what's kind of a difficult thing that you guys run into?
Every community has its challenges. There's always something. The founder, Tab, talked about how much he learned at every single project from the very first project that he ran, and his just willingness to say, oh, got that wrong, learn from it and do it better the next time. Like the very first school that they built, when he thought that he would be the leader and he would fly in from the U.S. and he would be the boss. He talks about the kind of day one, putting the roster down of who's going to work which day and pinning it to the wall of the old school that they were replacing. And then no one showed up to work. And then realizing that, oh, wait a second, none of these guys can read.
Oh, yeah.
Like just all the things that you learn. And so, lots of learnings, learning that it's impossible to haul everything by horseback. So they started building temporary roads that wash out as soon as the first rains come, but you can get enough materials in. So there's always something that you learn through each project and try to do better the next time. Learning, for example, to build the water only so far to the school, then build the school, and then build the water system to every home. Because people prioritize water more than the school. Yeah. It's the most urgent need. And so keeping the water at the home to the very last part ensures that the community, as much as they want this, they stay engaged through the entire project. And only when everyone's worked all the volunteer hours that they committed to this project do we turn water on to every single home. And if somebody's short a day, they can make it up or they can buy those days back. And we make sure that we create a way that everybody in the community has the ability to volunteer the number of days that are needed to build the projects. But that's how we make sure everybody's held accountable and that the project ends and is successful. So that's how they kind of those are the hiccups and the things that we've learned over the years and the way that we've adapted to make sure that the next project goes better.
And so is this... I guess there was a need for it in this location, but are you guys looking to branch out at some point? I mean, like you said, you're 10 years deep, right? Mm-hmm. So, but let's say Project Schoolhouse, all of a sudden, more people come to volunteer. The project gets, the organization gets larger, and you end up with, 10 Salinas.
More funds than we know what to do with.
More funds than you know what to do with,
Right.
and the bank can't hold all the money. Have you guys? I guess maybe you guys have so much to do in this area, you haven't quite thought about that, or is there areas that you've considered growing in that may need the same type of services?
There's for sure need in other countries, and even that have the same topography that would make the water projects, the type of water projects that we know how to build, applicable and successful in other areas. Because we're so community focused, and that's the core to how these projects are successful, it would take a lot for us to set up shop in a different place, a lot of energy and time and resources to rebuild that somewhere else. But the way that I'm trying to do that is by sharing what we've learned and what we know, by sharing how to build these projects with other NGOs that maybe already have a presence in other countries, by sharing how we organize, by sharing the water designs, by sharing how we fundraise, for example. So there's ways of expanding
collaborating with
collaboration
already...
and partnership.
Gotcha.
And I mean, to your question of if we had unlimited funds, there's probably unlimited communities right there in Nicaragua that could keep us busy for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we already have a 10-year waiting list. That list could probably grow much longer. For
sure. I mean, there are within the communities additional programs that we would like to run. We started an after-school club in 2020 as a way to help children who weren't getting enough enrichment in their education. So even after we build a school, it'll be one teacher for 40 to 60 children from preschool to the 6th grade. Imagine that
So
as a teacher.
tutoring.
So we do tutoring, and we like children who don't have library books. So we'll fund a little mini library so that they have storybooks to read. So develop a love of learning, a love of reading, and just one-on-one help. A little boy who didn't know how to hold his pencil, but he was in the 4th grade. Like just someone to hold your hand to show you how to hold your pencil. So you can be successful.
It's so simple that we take for granted.
So simple, and yet, and so that's how we also see an opportunity, even within the communities where we've already built, to continue to add on to programs that create that extra level of enrichment and help.
When I think about it, one thing that I hope comes from what your work over there is the next generation being exposed to the work that's done, and them taking initiative and the knowledge base that they've learned through watching, and it growing just through that, the local folks raising families that see this as a priority, and not that you guys wouldn't have a footprint in it, but it would almost to the point, at some point, maybe 2 or 3 generations from now, say, hey, what you've taught us is keeping us from having to really need you here.
We don't want a footprint there.
Go somewhere else.
Exactly.
You've taught us what we need to learn, and we've spread this through the community.
Yep.
That's the kind of fire I would love to see come from something like this.
I love the story of the little girl who would fix all of the electronics, right?
Oh, really?
In the after-school club, is hilarious. The teacher's like, yeah, if the computers don't work, I just have Judelka help me. If she doesn't know how to fix it, it's not happening. And this little girl she was in the 6th grade at that point, and she had found resources on the computer even that her teacher hadn't realized were there. So we have these little computers that have
awesome.
Storybooks, but she was teaching herself English because she found that there was a little English tutorial, a translator. So she was starting to read the English library books that were on there, all on her own, because she was curious.
Yeah.
And so
That's awesome.
She's amazing. So
a little 10-year-old IT.
Exactly. And what I would love to do is there a way I can get internet there? So she would have in her, granted she doesn't have electricity yet, but baby steps. It would just be so wonderful if she had electricity and internet connection. She could continue to read, continue to learn. Remote work for me someday.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is like humans, you're always going to have this mass group of folks that are the worker bees, right? In every community, in every society. But it's human nature that there's always going to be a few that push that envelope. You're always going to have the ones that want to learn more and are willing to do it on their own.
Yep.
And it's all about access.
Yep.
Access to electricity, access to the internet, access to water, access to
Yeah.
cleanliness.
Well,
that's...
Well, when they interview these kids, I think that was the first video that I saw maybe at one of the early fundraisers where they interview this one community. They interview all the kids. And, these are really young children, and they're asking them, what is it you want to be when you grow up? And, there was teachers and doctors and lawyers and engineers and scientists, all the gamut, right?
Yeah.
Like all these kids had all these big dreams, but then you see the reality of the statistics, like what percentage of these kids are even going to be able to finish primary school? What percentage are going to get to go on and go to high school? And it's just so they all want it, they want to do these things, but it's the, needing the access and the systems to get there. Just a big need. So
the school you guys provide takes them through the 6th grade?
We built primary schools. Well, that's not true. We actually, we added on to, so the way high school works there, they call it secondary school, is it's Saturday only, so the children can work with their parents in the farms all during the week. And and there'll be one shared one for several communities, and it'll be further away. So children do have to travel for longer distances to get there, and they go once a week only. And then they'll take home 5 days of homework. And so it tends to be at a central community that is the elementary school, but then there's just this little outbuilding that is the overflow for the high school on Saturdays. So we have at times built a second or third classroom onto the structure so that it can serve as the high school on Saturdays. So it's used all week long.
Okay. How does I guess I don't think you guys probably aren't a part of this, but how does one get? Does everybody go to high school, or is there some
Sadly,
sort
no.
of? How does that whole thing work there, as far as
Anyone
people?
can go to high school, but it takes a lot of determination because they're far away for the most part for most of the children. So they have to travel long distances, and they have to have a family who supports their learning.
And who can survive without them being there every Saturday?
Yeah.
You know, some of these kids are integral to the work of the family.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
keeping the family, you know, keeping the crops coming in, or the
Yep.
you
Or
know,
there's young children at home, and mom and dad are both working in the field, and someone needs to take care of the younger children. So there are all kinds of ways that things that get in the way of children being able to go into high school. But it's all doable with determination and support from your family. And so, oftentimes, I love particularly that our program coordinator and our project coordinator, who are, on our staff, are both women. And they're both out there making sure that they're telling their story about how hard it was for them to finish high school and the dedication that they had to finish high school. Because I feel like they're role models
Sure.
for the other girls in the communities in particular. And so it is harder. And if you're going to go to high school, chances are you're getting up in the dark and you're traveling in the dark and you're getting to school by 8 o'clock and you're going to school all day and then you're traveling home in the dark. So there are safety concerns. And so I've had girls who tell me that they can't go to school because their brother decided to drop out. And so without being able to go together,
Oh, I see.
their opportunity to go to high school was cut back. But it's all doable. It just takes determination. And so, we're hopeful by building the buildings that allow even more children to graduate from elementary school. We're teeing up that next level of
Yeah.
opportunity.
And it's interesting to kind of see it from a perspective of, if you can keep these kids engaged, you can keep them interested. You may end up at a point where, there's a large group from a community going together to high school. And, and now
Exactly.
there's less of an issue of not being able to go because my brother's not going, when 10 people from my community are going, well, now we're going together,
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and they don't take it for granted like our kids do, right? I mean, my kids.
I was going to say, I think I went to school one day a week too, so.
I mean, my kids complain about school and complain about school. They just take for granted what they've got, what this opportunity provides for them, versus these kids, they know, like they don't take it for granted quite the same way. And there are kids, Selena's told stories of kids who, their families just won't let them go to that next level of high school because of whatever the family need is. And they want it desperately. They know that it's a great opportunity to be able to go to and are willing to, travel in the dark and all those things to get that high school education. But, for whatever reason, they...
Yeah. And being able to have those two ladies, that have done it, to be representative, to be able to, I think a lot of times, as a young person, to see somebody that did it, and to know that you can do it.
Right.
I know me, we grew up in the same community. For me, I always had this small mentality of I didn't know what was in the world. I thought there was the federal prison, the state prison, and then the refinery.
Those are our job opportunities.
Those were the opportunities. But to be able to see somebody, that's gone to do more with their life, to go out somewhere, to come back, to say, hey, it's not easy, but it's doable.
Right.
How bad do you want to do this?
Exactly.
At least that's inspiring the younger generation to at least see that it's possible.
To see it's possible. And then the after-school program as well, to help them over whatever hurdles that they may have, right when they think that they just can't do it and they can't they don't understand because they're not getting individual attention. Anyone who can answer their questions, for the most part, their parents are not literate. And so they're not getting help at home. And I really feel like that after school program is the key for children who aren't quite being successful in school, to just giving them that boost that they need.
You know, it's I can see how as a parent down there, it's critical because, like you said, every physical body is needed, you know, and is counted on. And like you said, whether it's physically working or it's
Carrying
carrying water, or it's taking care of a younger sibling, everybody's critical to the function of that family, you know. And as a parent, I did a podcast with Clay Yostis's foreign exchange daughter. And it was so fun to talk to her because I've always been afraid to leave South Texas. You know, I always feel like I have to be close enough to go see my parents if I need to in a day. I don't want to be on the other side of the planet, you know. But she's 16 at the time. I think she's 17 now. We're talking, and there's no fear in her. You know, she wants to see the world. She wants to experience everything. And it's so interesting to see a young person like that with just eyes wide open and wanting to take it all in, you know, and to be able to these young kids that aren't seeing the same vision that she's seeing, you know, they don't even know what exists half the time out there. Like me growing up, my world was Live Oak County. Yeah. You know, I didn't know what was out there. You know, as I get older, I'm like, hey, you guys need to go experience the world, go blah, blah, blah. For me, that was just something I didn't even think twice about, you know. And so to be able to have these programs, and maybe, like you said, you're starting to go into the after-school program. Who knows what'll grow from that? Right. That in a couple of generations, these kids will go, there's more to life than the mountain. You know, they may come back one day. But at least they have that vision and that opportunity to say, hey, there's more out there and I can do it. And I can bring, me and Clay talked about having, you know, you lose young talent out of your community. They take off, they go build a life.
Right.
To be able to come back to your community and provide that knowledge for your community to make your community better. Yeah. You know, and it's just one big circle. And it all starts with running water.
Yeah. No, yeah. Well, and you never know what's going to trigger some sort of curiosity in a kid. You know, like I remember, who was our 6th grade history teacher? Mr.
Lawrence.
Lawrence. Yes, I was blanking on his last name. Okay. Mr. Lawrence. I loved him. Yeah. He always had the most interesting stories, and, you know, various of his stories got me thinking about whatever and wanting to explore the world. And I remember our text, this is so dorky, you're going to remember me as the biggest dork. The textbook we had that year, and it's just the way he added stories to whatever we were working on. There was a picture of Banff in Canada. So it's like a state, you know, one of their national parks in Canada. And I remember in 6th grade seeing that picture and being like, I'm going there one day. It was so gorgeous. We just got to go a couple years ago, you know, and you never know what thing a kid is going to latch onto that's going to get them interested in something else. But
you know, I remember falling in love with Texas history, and I remember being a kid. See, you had great parents. So I remember telling my dad, I was like, we learned about the Alamo, and I remember telling Dad, hey, I want the Alamo's in San Antonio, I want to go. Well, my dad's Mexican. And my dad says, you've been before. And I said, when? He said, when you were a baby. We went to the Alamo. And I said, I was a baby. I don't remember the Alamo. He said, you've been already.
And that's the last time.
So that's my daddy. You know? But no, I honestly, I think what you guys are doing and the service that you provide to these folks, and not only coming in and saying, hey, here's your fish, but here's how to fish, you know, because that's more critical than giving somebody something, is teaching them how to do a new trade to provide for themselves, but also giving them that education in the school, you know, and eventually it just makes life better for those folks, you know, and it gives them an opportunity to stay where they love living, you know, and I think that's one thing that it is amazing outside. There's tons of other things that are amazing about this, but for me, being the little small town guy that loves, simple living, being able to afford these people an opportunity to make their situation not any different, just a little bit better.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Website, where can people find you guys, and I guess donating on the website as well if they want to?
Donating anytime on the website.
Okay.
And then if people want to join the October 26th is the fundraiser.
It's called Cien Amigos.
It's called Cien Amigos.
100
Tell those 100 friends. So what was the story there with the Cien Amigos being?
Just every year having 10 tables of 10 friends and family come together to learn more about this work. And it's free to attend, free to have a table. We don't sell tickets, but we talk about this work, and we hope that it inspires people to get involved, whether that's through volunteering or donating. And you can find us at projectschoolhouse.org. You could sign up for our mail list there so you can get updates on what's going on with us, or of course follow us on all the social media channels.
And on your YouTube page, you've got some pretty neat videos that show the work you do, and you folks can go on there and take a look and see what you guys are doing, and the people that you're serving. I mean, you get to see the kids, you see the adults, you see them cooperating. There's a lot of good information on there, and it's
on the website too, or the video links to the videos on the website and YouTube. I didn't know we had a YouTube page.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I need to go find that. I'm so done with social media.
I'll send you a link.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Gabe. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Yes,
I appreciate you guys
Gabe.
coming. I
It was
enjoyed
fun.
sitting with you guys and learning so much about Project Schoolhouse. So
Thanks for helping us spread the word.
absolutely. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.